You're watching World Championship Wreckage, brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube page. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today's episode, Bret Hart in WCW. Did you know he didn't go to WCW for the money? He went there for friendship.
First of all, I just want to say it's nice to be in the house that Hollywood Hogan built.
Shut up. Face to face to Hollywood Hogan. And I want to look him in the eye until I hear those magic tunes of Hulk. Look, I said something about saying something that you are somebody that I've looked up to for a long, long time.
You know, I've always been a jam-up guy. Look at, what in the world?
Who are you?
What are you doing with this guy?
Let me tell you about a man named
How about hypnosis? Let's get thrown.
Psychosis?
Whatever. He's a great wrestler.
I can remember Chris Benoit when he was a little snot-nosed punk running around in Calgary.
El Dandy, I think you're a heck of a wrestler. You're a great technician in the ring, and you're a jam-up guy. William Goldberg. Whoa!
And ain't that a kick in the head? Happiness was there all along. All it took was a hug from Goldberg to fulfill the man we know as Bret Hart.
Shut up.
Let me tell you about a man named
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of World Championship Wreckage. And it finally happened. As you can see under my name, Will finally won a poll. So Will gets to lead a topic. And I'm just messing with him because he has one in the past. I got on a little bit of a winning streak for a while with our polls. But tonight we are going to be talking about the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, Bret the Hitman Hart in WCW, which I'm excited to talk about. I'm a huge Bret Hart fan. Have always been a big Bret Hart fan for his in-ring, maybe not necessarily outside of the ring, but in-ring, always a big Bret Hart fan. But we got some special guests with us. Bret's too big of a topic just to have a third chair. We got a third and a fourth chair. So with me, as always, my buddy from Bot Spots and Chair Shots, the Will Gray. From Cole TV, and you might know him from back in the day here on World Championship Wreckage on our YouTube channel, XLJtheOG. And Will, I'll let you introduce your guest, Juss.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, for those who do not know, directly below me on the screen, but in my heart, full time for life, is the one, the only. He is one of the Marks with Mikes. He is the host of the GetCho Podcast, and he is one of the core four for the #1 horror podcast on the hub. It is our boy Juss.
Yo. Appreciate this, guys. Anytime to talk about Bret Hart like we did, before this is great. Good to meet y'all in person.
Yeah,
I know we kind of interact a little bit on the Twitters, but it's cool to do this and do it live with y'all. So,
Heck yeah, sweet. Are you handing me the reins?
this is my day off. I'm just here to talk. I'm the eye candy at the show, baby.
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about in all of wrestling, no matter what, period, across the board. So when you talk about Bret Hart, especially in WCW, you have to bring up one of the most polarizing moments in wrestling history, and that's the Montreal screw job.
I even wore my pink for you, the only pink I got. So, by the way, follow Self Bet Wrestling. Go buy a t-shirt.
do it. Nice.
Big shout out for Self Bet. So we're going to start in Montreal, November 9th, 1997. You got, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Earl Hebner, Vince McMahon, Vince Russo, Jim Cornette, all of them the masterminds of what happened with that night. Vince is kind of in that Fear of Medusa Part 2 things where she's going to drop the title in the trash can. So he develops this plan where Shawn wins. We're going to start here. And basically, my first question is for you guys. It's a huge wrestling question, but was Montreal a work? There's been 3 times where we've gotten 3 different stories about it. wrestling with shadows. Bret thinks he's going to win and says on camera that he's supposed to win. Then the screw job happens. The dark side of the ring says that everyone says it's a screw job and nobody knew what was going to happen. You know what I mean? Nobody claimed. Like Jim Cornette was like, I hate the fact that we had this screwed Bret out. Like nobody but him and Vince, like, and Earl knew, like, that whole thing. But then very recently in 2023 with the A&E bio for Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon both say in that documentary, they agreed they would take it to the grave because they knew how bad it would hurt the business to find out they were going to screw Shawn over. So we've gotten 3 different versions of it throughout history. So we'll start there. You guys think Montreal was a work?
It's like the age-old question in wrestling. I mean, that's one of the biggest questions, like what ifs in wrestling. Honestly, I think it really does.
If you find out if it is, it changes so much.
I feel like, honestly, at this point, the lines are blurred. I think it's a combination of both, like being a work and then other. I don't know. I think you could take elements from each one of these stories, and it's part of the truth of what really happened on that fateful day in Montreal. That's my take on it after all these years. And no, Bret didn't screw Bret, damn it. Let's just say that.
Okay, so I'll go a little bit. So like I think I agree, like parts of it is probably a work, but you know, you go back and they had multiple phone calls to Bret and multiple options and multiple solutions, different variables for the equation, you know, to try to solve this big ass problem about what to do. So like I think Vince and Shawn and Earl had an idea, but as the match was playing out, like minute for minute, second for second, they're just calling an audible each time. You know, I feel like the first part, if we're going to dissect it a little bit, like I feel the first part of what they all agreed was for HBK to get Bret Hart out of the ring. I feel that part, that element of him being not in the ring had to be part of like a work kind of shoot thing. Because if you think about it, like how many matches have Bret Hart never started outside of the ring? They have always been in the ring.
Well, historically, it's known that match went for like 6 minutes before they ever actually
before they
even
ring
ring
the bell, which is like, you know, if you look at it, I mean, okay, like I know we're gonna be a little bit biased here, but Bret and Shawn are the in-ring generals of this era and that era. Like,
oh, absolutely.
When it comes down to it, those are the in-ring generals that everybody looks up to. And you're telling me that they're gonna start this match outside? Like, I feel like if part of this wasn't part of a work and part of it to, you know, screw Bret, like that part would never be in there. You know, they would always be like, no, we're starting in the ring. We're starting in the ring. So I feel like that part is part of the work. And I think everything else that happens after that was all just them. Okay, what should we do? What do you think we should do? I think they had options in case, because, you know, Bret's going to do what Bret wants to do, right? He's going to make it a wrestling match, which he ended up doing in that match if you watch it once they get back in the ring. And I think at that time, that's when they're just like, okay, let's just fucking try to make this a match. And then let's come up with an idea at a certain spot. That's when Vince is like, okay, ring the bell, you know? But everything after that, I mean, everything before that had to be some part of a work. But everything that happens after that isn't a work.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Bret Hart punching Vince McMahon in the face and giving him a black eye.
Right. Dude, the spit.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, oh, my gosh.
WCW.
Yeah, breaking the monitors, doing all that.
Right.
I have always kind of thought this, that, and people don't, I've never heard anybody else kind of put it this way. And we're going to get to Starrcade, where Bret shows up in WCW. I think Starrcade and Survivor Series here mirror each other in terms of, because we've heard about the change, the many changes, and what the referee was told. No, fast count, regular count, fast count, regular count. Like, I feel like the screw job is very similar. like it's almost like, you've heard so many things by the time you get to the ring. What are we actually doing? Are we doing option A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M? It's like, and so on. Like, what letter are we on? Are we on option B, 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 C, C, C at this point? That many down the line. And it like, it mirrors Starrcade because they did this. The ref was told so many different things. There were so many different options. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. But I don't want to believe it's a work, but I mean, I kind of lean a little bit more that it is. I mean, Vince wants to make good television, and even good television to his competitor makes him look good.
Oh yeah,
100%.
When I talked to Russo about it, he said that it was 1000% a shoot. He was like, we tried everything we could, you know what I mean, to get it to land and to make something happen. And he went on a very Russo rant about it. But in the long and the short, like, he was just like, we couldn't convince Bret of anything. This being WCW, though, let's get to the meat and potatoes of it. November 10th, 1997, the very next day after Montreal, Bischoff comes out with the NWO, announces that Bret Hart was coming over to WCW and that it was going to happen. Then on December 15th, almost a month later, he actually shows up on TV for a very quick appearance on Nitro. This is one of the first times that big deals were also leaked. Dirt sheets were around, but when Bret Hart's deal got released, there were a couple big parts about the deal. One, it was huge guaranteed money. 3 years, $2.5 million. So when you think about guaranteed cash, that's almost $1 million a year to pro wrestle. Then the very next line was a lightened schedule, meaning Bret Hart only wanted to work TV dates that he was booked on. If he wasn't booked for television, he didn't have to show up. And if he didn't take bookings for house shows at all anymore. He was only taking WCW television bookings, and that was it.
He's a megastar. Why wouldn't you want that? Why? Like, of course.
Then he got reasonable creativity, which means every storyline that went through Bret Hart's character had to be okayed by Bret Hart. And at one step further than that, to a certain level, he got to write himself into stories. Like Bret Hart had the Hulk Hogan syndrome. He kind of got to do what Bret Hart to a reasonable amount. And this is important to state because these are actual underwritings from the contract, because as we venture into this conversation, there's going to be questions of, did they use Bret Hart right? And this is that first connecting piece, because if he made it a point to write in reasonable creative control, how come he didn't step up more? So Starrcade 97, Washington, D.C., he ends up interjecting as a special referee towards the end of the main event. He helps Sting win by submission here, kind of solidifying himself in WCW as a babyface initially. So flip the page. Let's get to his first feud. Okay. It was with Flair. This is the thing. His non-compete was up. He was ready to go. They started doing it. Sold Out happened in 98, and he has the match with Flair. 2 questions for you guys about this. One, does this qualify as a dream feud? The idea of having Bret Hart and Ric Flair in a feud together. But the follow-up is, was 3 weeks enough time to build such an important story with these two big names?
I think they wanted to qualify it as a dream feud, but it really didn't work that way. And yeah, 3 weeks, not nearly enough time. I mean, especially like even like, could you imagine that in like today's landscape versus like then? You know, I mean,
that's like saying, all right, we're gonna build Cena Austin. You got 3 weeks.
right.
You're good. That's it. The match sells itself. And I think the other aspect of this too is that, well, I mean, Flair and Bret had already really worked with each other in the WWF. Hell, Bret won his first WWF championship from Ric Flair.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, I feel like on paper, it's like, okay, well, this kind of makes sense. You have 2 great, technical wrestlers, in-ring wrestlers. But when you look at the landscape of WCW at this time frame, it just like, it's kind of the same. Like one of these things is not like the other, and it just like for that in-ring rivalry, it didn't match up with what WCW was doing at the time, in my opinion.
Yes. 100% agreed, because I can't remember what Ric Flair was doing before this feud, or if he was really being used. Like
This was
in
right
Nitro.
after Kurt Hennig
I think
after War
The Kurt
Games.
Hennig thing,
Kurt
yeah.
Hennig change, like joining NWO War Games, slamming his head in the cage. This is kind of like his kind of comeback.
Right. And it's kind of weird, because it's kind of like if they're trying to reset Ric Flair as like, a contender, like this is kind of the wrong feud, to set him up with. I mean, because you have two guys that are kind of restarting at the same time, and it's kind of like it doesn't fit with the programming. Maybe if they like had longer than 3 weeks, then they could have made it something. They could do it a callback where like, back in the day, you weren't really, you were just a student and blah blah blah, I'm the master now type of thing, and over there in WWE it's different than WCW. They could have they could have went back in that whole nostalgia realm and kind of built it like that, but they didn't.
Will knows who I would say his first feud should have been with.
Sting,
Will,
100%.
it should have been Sting right away.
Yes,
and I know we'll get to it. That ends up happening, which is again great on paper. Horrible match at Halloween Havoc '98. They at least redeemed themselves a little bit later with a second match together, but no, like it should have been Sting. Like you've got Bret, who has been the face of WWF, versus Sting, who is the face of WCW. I'm sorry, yeah, Flair might have been the face and the franchise and whatever, like for the 80s,
right?
But mid to late 80s, 90s to where we are now, it's Sting. Plus the fact that they both have the same finisher, it writes itself. You could have done that in 3 weeks. And especially because if you look back at Starrcade, when Bret is asking for the belt, as soon as he gets it, he's looking at it. And it's a pause moment almost. Like he's looking at like, this I will hold one day. This is what will be mine. And I've always liked that part. I'm like, you're right there. You could have had it where he holds it for a second and Sting has to kind of be like, it's mine now. Then there you go. There's your start of your story.
Do you guys think we saw it with Flair in '92? He went to WWF. He got the title after winning the Royal Rumble. His character and style from the South, the Southern pro wrestling, didn't get over with WWF fans, and he came back to WCW. Do you think if Bret had gone to WCW straight after Montreal and got the big gold belt, would we have seen that same kind of thing? Would we have seen those Southern, Ted Turner pro wrestling fans kind of be like, who the hell is this guy and why does he have, Rick and Dusty's belt on?
I think the biggest thing with this is, once again, we got to go back to the time frame. Wrong place, wrong time. Because at this point, we have been waiting over for a year for Sting to get his revenge against the NWO. And finally going into that Starrcade. I mean, that's what we wanted to see. So I just feel like me personally, can I give you what I would have loved to have seen fantasy booking wise? Yeah. I would have loved to have seen Bret come in as a role as like a main event guy, but he's working with phenomenal in-ring mid-card talent.
The Eddie, you imagine the Dean Malenko,
exactly. Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn
from the get-go.
Canyon, good God, Bret Hart and Canyon, that would have been amazing.
Love me some Chris Canyon.
Just so many of those guys, and I mean, he did get to do some of that to a certain extent, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. But I don't know. I just feel like I say, I think the biggest thing with him was just the fact that this was like everybody. It was Sting, including myself. That's what I wanted to see is Sting, and I was a hardcore WWF guy, and Bret Hart, my favorite wrestler. Hence the Bret Hart poster in the background here. Just saying. But I mean, it felt weird to me seeing Bret Hart in WCW. Like I don't know. It just didn't feel right to me from the get-go. Like when he came out with the just the blue Hanes t-shirt, the jeans, and I'm just like, what the fuck is this? Like, this isn't Bret Hart.
The Ray-Bans, like isn't it? It wasn't even the same sunglasses.
The sunglasses weren't even right.
The circle ones.
Yeah.
God, don't even get me started. My biggest gripe though with Bret Hart WCW when he first come out, this man has the most iconic entrance music in the WWF.
I like his WCW music.
Okay, I like the second or third version, but when he first came out, that I wasn't feeling it, man.
I mean, my ringtone is his WWF.
Oh, of course.
Has to be, but
classic. So I was looking at the dates. We were less than 30 days between the Starrcade and Sold Out. It was Sold Out in 98. So he plays face for a little while, and he starts chewing on members of the NWO. He has pay-per-view wins with Bryan Adams and Kurt Hennig. Then, like that, once again, it raises that question. So they had him feud with somebody like Mr. Perfect. Was this once again just them going Bret and Flair? Now it's Bret and Mr. Perfect. Like, are they just throwing anything at the wall and seeing if it can stick with this guy? Because this is keep in mind, we're 6 months in now to the 2.5 years. So, roughly 20% of the way there. And, they've just been sticking him with other, legends, but in 97, 98, they're not quite legends yet. But looking back at it, it's like, are they just throwing pasta at the wall and seeing what sticks with Bret?
They're playing the greatest hits. That's what they're doing.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I also think too, I would say this, you mentioned the creative control. Like, I believe Bret was always really good friends with Bryan Adams. And I mean, shoot, we know the past with him and Kurt. So, and I personally, I love that Uncensored 98 match with those two. Like that's a hidden gem match, I would say.
Uncensored 98 is probably the best one of that entire pay-per-view series.
It's one of my favorite times in WCW 2 in the 98 range, where all the pay-per-views are split NWO, WCW pay-per-views.
Yes.
Because I've written about how close they were to having an actual brand split at this point in WCW. And, so Just what do you think? Were they just sticking to the wall and seeing what they could get?
I kind of agree with them, but also too, I feel like they're playing the safety card. Like they are so invested in doing this whole NWO versus WCW. I think they're at the point where they're building up Goldberg at this point now. And Sting has a title, and they're trying to push it forward with the whole NWO still. And that whole thing. And, don't forget, too, this is also a time when the Cruiserweight title is also like the most. It's hot at this time in 98, like Juventud Guerrero and Dean Malenko and Rey Mysterio. They're becoming household names at this point, And I just felt like they're just being safe with Bret. They're like, all right, let's just put him with, Kurt. They know each other. Let's put him with Brick. Let's put him with people that he knows, and let them make their own thing, and and we'll just focus on this. That's what I got out of it, even like just talking about it and hearing with you guys and watching it back in 98 too.
So April of 1998. Okay, so we're 5 months into the stay now. We finally get the first heel turn. And I say the first heel turn because there's another one, but we're going to talk about the transition of this character with Bret, because there's a little bit of some plot holes here in the story, to say the least. So April of 98, we are at Spring Stampede. Bret turns on Savage, helping Hogan reclaim the title. So this was such a weird moment.
This is the Nitro after Stampede, right?
Right after Stampede.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, right after Stampede. Coming out of Spring Stampede. So we're looking right after that. Hogan wins the title. This is one of those, this is me. I love conspiracy theories. And this is one of those, was this a Mandela effect? Because finding my research, going through it all, Bret Hart was never an official member of the original NWO. But it felt an awful lot like I remember Bret Hart being an original member of the NWO. He never outright joined. He was like a ride-along with them. Like he was there, he associated with them, but he was never like a patched in member. And I'm asking, is this a Mandela effect? Do you guys were you in the same umbrella as me where you were like, no, Bret Hart was in the NWO at one point? Before the NWO 2000 with Jeff Jarrett and all of that, the original incarnation of the NWO. Is that a Mandela effect?
Are we saying he's not a part of NWO Hollywood? Because I thought he was.
My research, like even things, I mean, I'm talking from Wikipedia to Sportster to Last Word on Sports, just looking through anything I can about Bret Hart's time in WCW. And literally all of them have, this is a big redeeming quality, is because everybody goes, we all remember it, but he was never actually made a full-time member of the NWO. To me, that was a Mandela effect. I was like, I thought Bret Hart was in the NWO.
Well,
I still think Bret Hart was in the NWO, honestly, but
yeah. If now we can throw this back, Will, to one of our past episodes, we covered the TV title Best of 7, Booker T and Benoit.
Correct.
One of the last matches, Bret Hart sitting on a limo with Eric Bischoff. And if you look back on it, Bret Hart was never wearing an NWO shirt. He was always wearing that Hogan shirt that had like the skull that said "For Life" on it.
Yeah,
Like he was always wearing that Hogan shirt.
He never wore letters, right?
He was never wearing the letters. So I mean, you look back on it. I mean, he's like an associate. I'm here when you need. It's almost like a mercenary. Like I'm here when you need me. When you need my skills. Yeah.
Because I gotta say, I remember he was a part of the NWO Hollywood team at Fall Brawl that year.
He was.
Right.
But you're right. That's a fascinating, now that you guys say that, holy shit, my mind's blown, man.
It's a Mandela effect. I usually try to get one a week, XLJ. So
well, you got a pretty damn good
he's
one
pretty good at it.
this week. I would almost equate it to nowadays, for all you New Japan fans out there, it's kind of like in present day in the Bullet Club, it's kind of like Kenta involved with the Bullet Club, because Kenta is not really like, he's Bullet Club, but he's not Bullet Club,
Right.
He's also Chaos, which is super weird. Like, he's an active member in multiple stables.
It's crazy. Man.
New Japan is crazy. Gato has no plan. Like his whole life is just, we're talking about throwing pasta at the wall and see what's sticking. He just takes the whole pot and he's just like, ah!
Stuff like the House of Torture, but that's another story.
Oh my god! Do we have time to talk about that? Or
welcome to the WCW podcast, where we spend an hour discussing Japanese stables.
No, but to what you're all saying, I remember him. I guess you're right. I guess now I think about it, I guess he was associated with NWO because when they had the Wolf Pack and they had Hollywood Hogan's team. Like anytime that they would do promos versus each other, Bret Hart was with the Hogan side.
Yeah.
He was
always in that Hogan shirt.
Yeah, you know what? Now I'm thinking about maybe he was just a Hogan mercenary type of thing.
It makes perfect sense that he's a mercenary. He's the hitman.
Yeah. See, we just broke the system, guys. We just decoded something that's like they didn't even realize was in the original programming. We just broke the simulation.
I'm not even a Hogan fan, and I still want that Hogan shirt.
Dude, Hollywood Hogan is the best version. Like I hate the guy, but like his ring gear that's the best version. Yeah.
The figure that came out not too long ago, the Hollywood with the boas. I'm like, I hate Hulk Hogan, but I want that figure.
The lightning on the side of his ring, his tights, dude. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and how it goes down to the boots.
Yep.
Yeah, that they did something right with that.
I think the NWO just in general was a success. It saved WCW and then was ultimately their downfall later.
Yes, yes.
It's a double-edged sword, literally.
You're 1,000% right. I reference WWE doing it a lot with the bloodline, as if they go to the well one too many times, it'll eventually run dry and the fans won't react the way they expect them to anymore. And I feel like that's what happened with the NWO.
Yeah.
So let's get to a title. Okay. Finally, we're in that end of summer range of 98. Him and DDP have a match for a vacant US title. He wins his first WCW title, and over the next few, like that quarter 2 into quarter 3 of 1998 range, summer and fall, I called it going through the WCW gambit. because he wrestled DDP, he wrestled Lex Luger, he wrestled Booker T, he was in a War Games match, like that 3 or 4 months. So keep in mind, we're now 9 months into his arrival. And since Bret Hart arrived, we got Flair, we got Hennig, we got, DDP, Luger, War Games, Booker T, like all of this thrown into an 8-month reign and a U.S. title reign. So, like, it's the continuation. If the man had creative control, why was he not really doing anything of substance? Because it just seems like he was just there to put butts in seats.
I mean, you've talked about the unofficial brand split, which one day we will do that damn episode. He was very showcased on Thunder. He was very like the headliner of Thunder. And the U.S. title was kind of really featured as a main title on Thunder. I think of that U.S. like when I think of that, and that's like my second favorite belt of all time is the WCW U.S. title of this era. And I like if you were to say, okay, who's your top 5 WCW U.S. title holders? Bret Hart's in there. I think of Bret Hart in this time because it felt like he had it. Like maybe it's just my teenage years, but I'm like it felt like he had it forever.
He had it a lot. I think there were 3 combined reigns in WCW total, and they were all like what Juss was talking about with the Cruiserweight title. There was one point where the U.S. title was kind of held in the same regard like the Intercontinental was. It was the workhorse title. So it was I don't want to say bouncing around to downplay it. It's not the hot potato TNT title, but like the title changes meant something. Every time they would do something and the belt changed, people were like, oh shit. Bret has it. No, Booker has it. No, Benoit has it. Like, it meant something when these guys got that belt.
Yeah.
And I feel like
eventually got to Goldberg.
Yeah. Yes. Like that's kind of the point with it. It almost felt more valuable in a lot of ways, especially later in the run, than the actual 10 pounds of gold did, or the big gold belt rather, because of the way it started to get handled with, your Russos and your Russos and your Arquettes and stuff like that. It almost felt like it was a more valuable title to WCW than the big gold belt was.
Yeah, and because like the length too that the wrestlers had it wasn't just like, okay, I don't want to compare, but like the TNT title, right? Like it's kind of supposed to be the same thing, right? But like the US title, what WCW was doing at that time is that the wrestlers had it for at least 4 or 5 months. And they were feuding with these guys, days in, days out. I remember, like, I think the Ben redacted and Booker T, their best of 7 match was for the number 1 contender for the U.S. title, right? I think,
was it TV title?
The TV title, yeah, it was something like that. But like, at some point they would get the U.S. title too. Like, they built it up. Like DDP had the U.S. title for a long time.
DDP, Raven,
Raven,
it got to Goldberg.
Yep.
I mean, Raven had it. Raven, the exact same thing happened. Like Macho Man, they did the same thing on the same 2 nights.
I was gonna say
Raven won it at Spring Stampede, lost it to Goldberg the next night on Nitro. Macho Man won the big gold at Spring Stampede, lost it to Hogan. So they did the same storyline twice in one night.
Oh my gosh.
Every title reign he had in WCW was less than 30 days, except for his second and third U.S. title reign. Every other title reign was 30 days or less in WCW, with the exception of those 2. And both of them were 70 or less.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he never had over a 90-day reign for any title. So,
which is weird to me because it does, like, I think back of that time and it felt like he had it forever. Maybe it's just because he had it multiple times that my teenage brain thinks like that.
I have to say, like, oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead, XLJ. No, go ahead.
I have to say this, like, as a fan, as a huge Bret Hart fan, like, and I mean this is no disrespect for the U.S. title. I love the U.S. title. But to me, that's another thing with WCW, with Bret's run there. To me, him holding the U.S. title, it just didn't feel right to me. I mean, if anything, Bret Hart should have been, in my opinion, the world champion or been in the hunt or contention for that. And once again, that's no disrespect to the U.S. title whatsoever.
I mean, the U.S. title is always weird when it's on, someone from another country. I mean, Lance Storm at least threw a Canadian sticker on it.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, this is true. If I could be serious for a moment, though, I will say that. No, it just felt, just the whole presentation of Bret Hart and WCW, like, to me, like the first year and a half of it, it just didn't feel right to me.
Right.
When we get to the end of like 99, that's when it was like, okay, I'm kind of, but of course, we know how that went.
Yeah.
So this is where we kind of get into this like sneaky snake Bret Hart, because during the U.S. title run, he's portrayed as a face, but he's like that face that does sneaky heel stuff anyways. So like he's not really a face, but he's not a full blown heel either. And like historically, when you look back at this period on Bret Hart, like you're not really sure how to feel about him. Because sometimes he'll win, that he'll by any means necessary kind of thing, like if he needs to be a little Eddie Guerrero, like he would, like he'd lie, cheat, and steal if he had to get the win. But this leads to like the Hogan and the NWO thing where they were in the match and then he went down and Sting came out to like check on him and be like, oh man. And all this was a ploy to get Hogan and the NWO able to beat the crap out of Sting. So it was like a double cross. So you're like, this whole time he made the heel turn, then he was portrayed as a babyface, but continued to do heel stuff in the mid card. And then when he gets back into the main event picture, he does sneaky stuff to do a double turn on Hogan. So it's like these plot holes in his story with exactly. He made the heel turn on Sting, or he made the heel turn initially on Savage. And then he was in the mid card portrayed as a babyface, but winning doing heel stuff. And then he made a heel turn to go with Hogan on Sting, which led to the Sting and Hart feud leading up to Halloween Havoc. God. So it's these plot holes here for somebody who I said starting at the beginning we would discuss. He had relative creative control on his character, yet we see him feuding in this mid-card scene with no real direction. Because this whole time, once again, you had one of the biggest stars on the planet, but you didn't really know what to do with it's like the dog chasing a car. WCW didn't know what to do with it when they finally got Bret Hart.
Yeah. It was just, okay, we got to get him. Oh, we got him.
Right.
Now what?
Shit. Yeah.
Well, and I think we kind of talked about, you mentioned this earlier, Thunder. I think the whole point, if you look back in the history, the main selling point for getting Bret and paying him that much money is because they wanted a face of Thunder, and that was going to be Bret Hart. But yeah, like what you just said there, like with the creative and stuff with him, with creative control and this back and forth with him, I honestly feel like at this time frame, Bret just doesn't give a shit. Like, I think he's just kind of like, I think there's almost a part of him that's like, still
fuck you, pay
obviously,
me.
Yeah, fuck you, pay me. Bitter still towards, I think the bitterness of what happened in Montreal is just eating his heart up too. And let's also keep in mind too, his brother Owen is over.
Yeah, I think those two things combined, I think really.
Yeah.
Also, he's got to be hurting too, like knowing that he left WWE and seeing how hot they are and see what he's doing on the other side. He's probably like, what am I doing here? And look what they're doing over there.
But also probably really angry too. Like, I help build.
Right.
Like, I am the foundation of what they're doing now.
And
like, Hogan is the dirt. I'm the foundation of the house, the stability of it, and now here's the house being built on top.
Well, not only that, too, DadHat. We also let's keep in mind this time frame. Who is the hottest heel in all professional wrestling?
Hogan.
It's Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mr.
So Mr. McMahon does not happen if the Montreal Screwjob happens.
Yes,
not happen.
Correct.
That's true.
So there's got to be that aspect of it too.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like, I feel like, you know, the memes when you see them on like TikTok and stuff where it's like middle-aged dudes with podcasts and it's like, can I blow your mind real quick? And then he says something like ridiculous. I feel like that's what the last like 15 minutes of this podcast has been, is us breaking down the best there was, the best there is, blah, blah, blah. And then we're like, you know what? Bret Hart really wasn't that fucking good, guys. Like,
to be honest, I would have
WCW.
came on. I would have came on and done this even if we weren't doing a podcast. Like it would just be a regular conversation.
just hanging out talking about Bret Hart.
Just hanging out talking about Bret Hart and like the what ifs and like what happened. And I know you keep going back about the whole contract thing about him possibly interjecting him or whatever with his creative control. But I wonder if that was just something that he just put in the contract but never was going to use, just because it was in Hogan's contract. It was in
He might
Scott
have
Hall's
seen
contract.
Hogan abusing it.
Right.
Like,
Kevin Nash's contract. You know, it was just in
I'm
their
not gonna
contract.
do that, brother. Like I'm
Yeah.
seeing the other people do it. Maybe it's like his fail safe. Like if I
Yes.
if they're saying, okay, tomorrow you're coming out and dancing in a chicken outfit. Nope, no, I'm not.
Right.
But
that means in reality, though, if you look at it like that and you're like, maybe he wasn't using his creative control here and he was just doing what he was told, then that goes in line with what you guys were saying about him like checking out because of Montreal. You know, like maybe he was just good with being relinquished to the mid card and lost in the mid card because he was making almost $1 million a year to wrestle 30 times.
this is how I look at it. Okay. When I went to college, all right, I placed into like college calculus, right?
Mhm.
My major required one math class. It could be the basic math class.
Yes.
Which one do you think I took?
You didn't
did-
take
you did
calculus?
algebra.
No, it's the same thing. I'm getting paid all this money and I don't have to carry the entire company on my shoulder. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yes.
Once again, you know, fuck it. I'm a Bret Hart guy again. Like, it makes sense. You convinced me.
Like I've done my time. Fuck it. It's almost like the equivalent of a person who is like about out the door and is like semi-retired, right? It's like they know, like, okay, I got these 2 years, and then after that, I'm fucking done. So
Yeah. And to kind of going back with the what you guys were talking about too about Bret Hart. Also, we were making fun of his Hanes tee and his glasses. Like, what did he change? Like, he didn't add anything new. Like, obviously, he couldn't do a lot of the Bret Hart stuff that he was doing in WWE, but it's like he didn't reinvent himself either. You know,
No. Same moveset,
yes,
same cadence, same gear, same. I mean, it was. I mean,
It was just Bret Hart, just not Bret the Hitman Hart. Like, that's
Right.
literally the only difference. It was just Bret
it
Hart.
was the Hitman, Bret Hart.
Bingo.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Just
that
like
was the
it
way
was.
they got around
Just
it.
like it was. Instead of being the Macho Man Randy Savage, it was Randy Macho Man Savage.
right. The
Gee.
madness.
The
The
madness.
madness.
So after we get through Starrcade in 98, we wrap back around into 99. So keeping in mind now, guys, February of 99, we are 12, 13, 14 months into since he got into the company. We're 14 months in. We've had 3 successful U.S. title runs, but once as we decided, none of them lasted more than 90 days. The longest was 71 days for his longest U.S. title run. He's had some great feuds with some legends, but they were always just kind of there, but no build. They happened because fuck it, let's put Sting and, you know, Bret Hart on a card because we've got both guys. Then we get another one of those. In February of 99, Hart drops the 3rd U.S. title reign to Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Which we've
When I-
seen already
Yeah.
with the IC title.
When I say this, and I hate, and a part of me is like, I feel sorry for the fans listening, but part of me, like, looking into when
We
I
have
go back
fans?
to, we do. We,
Okay.
you know, like your wife, Al will listen, like Jeff will probably play it back since he's here. So we'll get at least like 3 or 4 views this
All
week.
right, sweet.
Guaranteed.
We have
Yeah,
fans.
well,
Okay, cool. No, I'm just messing with. I love you guys. Oh, by the way, we're thank you to the 90 subscribers we have. We're 10 away from 100. That's Mind-boggling.
Let's get that 100. Let's get that 100.
Yeah.
Let's
Follow.
go.
Click the bell. So when we get to Piper now, and it's the same thing. It's just another legend. It's just another feud. He did drop the belt. Granted, the U.S. title was involved, but is this just the same rinse, wash, repeat with every other feud Bret had in WCW? The only difference is it was a feud we really loved 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, Bret and Piper would have been smoking hot in like 1989, 1990. Instead, we got it in 1999 in WCW again, kind of playing the hits, DadHat, like you said. Is that just the song and dance of what happened here with Bret Hart now, looking at his WCW run?
Yeah, 100%. And you know the thing I hated about this feud, is that I felt like no one cared about Roddy Piper. I mean, I'm sure we cared because we're huge wrestling fans, but the majority of the wrestling fan at that time in WCW did not care about Roddy Piper, and I just felt like it kind of diminished him as a legend in general. Coming back to do this feud, which I understand, like, whatever, you're getting paid, you're doing this, wrestlers got to do the job for the other wrestler, but like at that time during the whatever you want to call the attitude era of WWE and WCW, I just felt like bringing in the legends at that time was the wrong thing to do.
Well, I think too with Piper had really lost his edge. This isn't the vintage Piper we knew. This was I've had my hip replaced, Roddy Piper.
Yeah, I'm a little overweight. I'm not in the best shape. Yeah. Well, I mentioned the playing the hits. This is also why WCW and their, Eric Bischoff and everybody doing it this way and playing the hits, because heaven help that they put Bret with the Eddie Guerreros, Dean Malenko's, Chris Jericho's, because that elevates them and pushes out the Hogans, the Savages. And heaven help, nope, sorry, that is who is running the power play right now in that company in this time frame. The Hogans, the Bischoffs, the Savages, like putting Bret, who is a megastar main eventer, with people who are on the cusp of being main eventers.
Right.
They wouldn't allow that. Because Hogan couldn't hang with a Benoit. Hogan couldn't hang with a Jericho, an Eddie Guerrero, a Malenko, and so YT's a main eventer with those people.
Right. And it's funny, you mentioned this. This is like what, February 99 or whatever. Doesn't Eddie Guerrero cut that promo talking about the same thing that we're just talking about right now? Like, he cuts
around
the promo,
the same time frame,
like how he's just being held back, but not just him being held back. Like a lot of wrestlers being held back just because of they just want to make money. Like, I feel like that's such an iconic.
Now promo. I got to go research something. Did we ever get a Bret Hart Perry Saturn match?
I don't know. I don't think so. And that was another guy I was going to throw out, was Perry Saturn.
Actually, hold on. I've got the cage match open. Y'all keep talking. I'll pull it up and see if I can find a Perry Saturn.
But that's one guy that I feel like forgets to get mentioned, in that group that we just talked about,
Oh yeah, Perry Saturn, like, man, he had a great. Now this is kind of be a flip here, but man, Perry Saturn in WCW, he had a good run, man.
Oh yeah,
like his stuff he did there in comparison when he went to the WWF, night and day difference, man. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, they gave him a dress, but fuck, in WWF, they gave him a mop. So I don't know. You take which one's the lesser of two evils. Well,
but when that bell rang, though, I didn't want to be the other guy.
Yeah.
Him and Perry Saturn wrestled one time.
Let me guess, Thunder?
No, it was a Nitro match. It's in the tournament we're going to get to for his only world title win in WCW, or his first world title win in WCW.
That's right.
In the tournament, yeah.
This has to be when Saturn left the flock, right? Like that big storyline when he left the flock.
Oh, this was way after that.
Oh, this way.
Is it way after that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this is even after the dress with Jericho. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So after he has the feud with Piper, he does a quick stint with Malenko, and he tears his groin, or partially tears his groin. And this leads to the famous, like, "Hey Bischoff, I quit" scene in Nitro, where he quits on Nitro and walks out, and it's a kayfabe quit because he has to go off and have surgery to fix an injury. Unfortunately, while he's gone, they're planning his comeback. He's getting ready to go on the Tonight Show to talk about coming back and everything that's happening. And this is unfortunately when Owen Hart passes. This is one of the biggest matches in Nitro history. It's one of the highest grossing matches in Nitro history. And it's the Lord Voldemort, Bret Hart, Owen Hart tribute match that they put together for Owen after he passed. And it's a tear-jerking, groundbreaking, just gut-wrenching match. And it's his first match back on TV from his injury. So like, I can't imagine what he was going through, but just kind of what did you guys think about this point, where you guys were at when you found out about Owen, and what you think would be going through your mind going, shit, now I've got to go out there and wrestle in my brother's name against his best friend?
I can't even imagine like what he was going through. Like already that we've talked about it, the pain in his heart he was going through, and now this, and the way it went down too. On top of that, it's just like, and for what he did and what they produced, this is by far the best Bret Hart match in WCW, hands
Wasn't it
down.
in the same arena? Wasn't it in the Kemper Arena?
It was in the Kemper Arena too. I mean, just all the significance of this matchup. And honestly, what's cool about this, like all things considering, of course, is this you got a glimpse of Bret the Hitman Hart from the WWF. In this matchup, because this was the Bret Hart I grew up and knew. This was the guy, like, okay,
These were two guys from the dungeon. These were two from the dungeon.
Yeah.
I remember that match. I remember watching it. I remember being sad. I remember Owen passing, and I mean, I've said it on here multiple times. I was a WCW guy. By that point, I was flipping, and Owen Hart was one that grabbed my attention. And years later, like, I would go back and we'll have watched more stuff from WWF, stuff that was years, down the years past and everything. And Owen Hart, even though I knew he had passed at this point, like, he always stuck out to me. Like, he was something special that they should have capitalized on before and after Bret left in a main event picture. But that match, Bret and Benoit, like, it's yeah, I agree with you, XLJ. Best match that he has in the company.
Yeah, I would go as far as you say this. I think it's the best match in Nitro history in ring. It's the best Nitro match.
I probably agree with that.
That's a take right there, and I don't think there's a lot that could be up there with it. As far as like possibilities and roles, like there would be a short list of matches that could hang with that match.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is I'll call it the best and worst 30 days in Bret Hart's career. Okay.
NWO 2000, baby.
Yeah. So we're going to go Mayhem. Okay. This is where he wins the finals to get crowned the WCW World Heavyweight Champion.
Opposite Benoit again.
Bingo. 11/21/99. All right.
In Canada.
I was going to say, in Canada. Oh, that crowd was hot. They were so hot for this match.
Everything's huge about that. It builds up. He wins it. A few weeks later, on December 7th, him and Goldberg win the tag titles together. So you get Bret 2 belts. Okay?
Bret 2 belts. No.
So you got Bret 2 belts. Okay, it was like, yeah, boom, double champion. A week later, they lose to the Outsiders.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to Starrcade 99, and it's Bret Hart versus Goldberg. And we know the history, the thrust kick, the drop on the head, everything that happened that night. That was the eventual end of the in-ring return. But I have a little bit of trivia for this. So let's talk about that 30 days from hell as we kind of round out the in-ring side of Bret's, biggest WCW run. Winning his first title, being Bret 2 belts, and then the downhill decline of losing to the Outsiders and then the Goldberg stuff. Like, did you think it was one of those another Bret Hart just kind of doing Bret Hart WCW stuff because it was like good on paper and just poor execution, which seems to be the biggest homage to what WCW was doing.
That's what our T-shirt needs to be.
There you go.
Like WCW, great on paper, poor execution.
Will, if I'm being honest, at this time frame, I think I honestly have blinders on because I was just so happy finally Bret had the world title. And like I wasn't really thinking other than like, and honestly going into like Starrcade, I was just like, I mean, I don't know, in my heart of hearts, I was like, Bret's going to retain. But of course, nobody knew like that would be literally his last match, essentially.
Right.
Or at least, until later on. But yeah.
By this point, sorry, Jess.
No, go ahead.
This is, we've talked about like the flipping the channels a lot on episodes. Will, by this point, I had mostly flipped over. I would check in here and there. I remember the Arquette stuff. I remember Bret winning the belt. I remember NWO 2000. This was really when I was on WWF. I was in full Attitude Era. I was Austin, Rock, Taker, Mankind. I was fully over there now.
Yeah, sadly enough, this the only memorable thing that happened is the whole bulletproof thing with Goldberg. That was like the most memorable thing out of that whole.
Where he took the spear with the bulletproof vest under his hockey jersey. Yeah,
metal plate.
Yeah. That's the most memorable thing out of this last couple of days up until that time in Starrcade, and that sucks because it's like, you talk about the time that he came in to the time to this point, and it's like there's only a couple like top 5 moments of his WCW career, and that's one of them. Like he didn't even wrestle. It wasn't even a wrestling match.
Probably the top.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He didn't even really do anything. He just wore like a shield and Goldberg speared him. It's like that was it. Like that's his whole thing.
So as we get ready to wrap up, I've got a couple easy questions for you guys. One, was Bret's WCW run too little too late for WCW? Meaning by the time he got there in 98, was the damage done? Or do you think, he could have helped? Or do you think the injuries are what hurt him more? Like he came in with a broken hand, he had a groin injury, he had the concussion. Like, was it a booking? I guess the better way to put it, was it a booking issue with Bret? Or did he just have the injury bug for 2.5 years and just couldn't get his feet underneath him?
Neither.
Oh,
I think Montreal doesn't happen. I think that Bret wins Montreal. The next night on Raw, he relinquishes it. He goes to WCW. We get a totally different Bret.
110%.
I think we get a workhorse. I think that Montreal and the fact that something that he helped build screwed him over. Like it's gut wrenching. I think it's like a family member turn. I mean, he talked about how, you hear on WWF documentaries all the time. Oh, Vince is like a father figure to me. Oh, Vince is like a father figure. Right. I think that doesn't happen. I think we get workhorse Bret. I think we get main event Bret Hart earlier. I think we get multiple world championships. I think we get better feuds. I think we get Bret that comes in and looks at storylines and goes, I'm not executing my creative control, but this is bullshit.
Yeah.
Right.
Dude, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, and honestly, we talk about the injuries. The biggest injury of all to me was a broken heart. See what I did there? No pun intended. But I just feel like, man, if he came like you say, finished clean out with the WWF, he would have been like, okay. He would have been like his dads do, like, okay, I can work with this guy and I can work with, he would have been putting over all of those guys we mentioned on the mid card. And dare I say this, we may still be having a conversation if WCW is still around if those proper mid card talent was pushed into the main event stratosphere.
Yes.
Like that, we could be talking a whole completely thing. But one more thing I will say about the Bret Hart run, a combination with all these things too. I do think there's something we haven't mentioned that also did hurt Bret Hart, and that's the fact of the matter of his body of work in the World Wrestling Federation is second to none. And it's like, how in the world are you going to top that? And I think that's another aspect of it that hurt too. It's kind of like those like your band that puts out like all these great phenomenal albums, and then they just kind of go through a hiccup and just put out a couple crappy albums. And honestly, as much as I love Bret Hart, the WCW years were some pretty shitty albums for the Hitman.
Well,
Yeah,
said.
I agree. Because, like, kind of like to taking bits and pieces of what you both said, like, yeah, let's say he just leaves the next night on Raw after the Montreal school job, goes to WCW as Bret Hart. It would be kind of like what Daniel Bryan is doing right now in AEW. He's not like Daniel Bryan, Yes Movement. He's Bryan Danielson, the wrestler.
Technician.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. And like that's what Bret Hart could have been, because like we have an angry Bret Hart leaving a workplace, going into another workplace with the same anger and bitterness. You know, so I feel like, yeah, it was. I mean, I'm gonna blame WCW for not finding anything to do, because I think that's just crazy how you couldn't find anything. But like, it's also kind of partly a little bit with Bret, partly.
Second question, and we talked about it a lot, but this is the final say so. After looking at it, the Flairs and the Stings and the Pipers and the Hennings and everybody, was WCW just booking Bret for clout to put a butt every 12 inches?
Yes. Oh,
we can all agree to that.
Yeah, and I think also too with it, Bischoff, and it still blows my mind to this day, but I think Bischoff was like, oh my God, this is like one of the most monumental things in the world just happened in the world of wrestling with the Montreal Screwjob. It's like how they didn't like capitalize on that, especially somebody the caliber of Eric Bischoff, the same Eric Bischoff that had a Medusa throw the women's title in the trash. I mean, how you don't do something to go off that, it just blows my mind.
Wasn't it Mike Chioda who said something along the lines of like, Eric Bischoff was so excited about getting Bret, but never took the time to think about, okay, well, why is WWF it's fine getting rid of Bret?
Right. Right.
Oh, that's true.
Yep. And then the final question, gentlemen, before we pack it up and go home. Where do you think he ranks on your WCW power rankings? Did Bret do enough in 3 years to get into your Mount Rushmores of WCW?
Not even top 10.
Yeah, not even top 25, as much as I love you, Bret. Like, just, I look back on, like, it's kind of like this, man. I look at it as, like, let's talk Michael Jordan, the Bulls, synonymous with each other, right?
Very
like,
different than when he played on the Wizards, though.
Exactly. Bret Hart in WCW is Michael Jordan playing for the Wizards.
Yes. Or Michael Jordan playing baseball. Let's just be honest, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, we go there.
But I agree with that. I put him on my Mount Rushmore for my favorite wrestlers of all time. You know, 100%. I say Shawn Michaels was the best performer to ever do it, and Bret Hart was the best in-ring worker to ever do it. That's why they set 1 and 2 on my list.
Yeah.
But thanks for hanging out, chatting about Bret Hart with me, guys. DadHat, back to you.
Yeah. So first of all, Will, awesome job. Big round of applause to the bearded wonder. Thank you both, XLJ and Juss, for joining us. This is a blast. Yeah. We of course want to have you guys back on again for some future episodes, because this was a cool roundtable. I like this one. This was probably one of my favorite episodes, if not my absolute favorite that we've done so far. Right. So first of all, let's start with Juss. Juss, the floor is yours. Plug everything you do, where they can find you, everything.
All right, you can find me on GetCho Podcast on Twitter, GetCho Podcast on Instagram. If you can't find me there, you can find me on Marks with Mikes. We are going to have a GetCho episode probably this weekend. We just did a Marks and Mikes earlier today, talking about a little bit of wrestling week and a little bit of the UFC that's coming up too. So yeah, check those out.
Thanks, LJ.
Absolutely. Well, you can find me over on a YouTube channel, Cole TV which we have a lot of great wrestling content over there, such as weekly shows like our Pro Wrestling 60, where we cover everything that happened in the world of professional wrestling every week in 60 minutes or less, where I'm joined by my partner in crime, my brother from another mother, Mr. B-Roll, and also some of your favorite Wrestle Talk creators like Mr. DadHat himself. So that's every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Pacific. Also, you can catch our weekly show, Learning the Ropes, where we talk about the history of professional wrestling. Currently, right now, we are getting ready for Impact Slammiversary. So we're doing a deep dive on the history of Impact Wrestling. So you can check that out on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern as well. And we have lots of other shows over there, even for you non-wrestling fans. Everything from our show, The Hunt, to I'm Your Huckleberry, and so much more. We even have a talking dog on our channel. My dog, Chubby, he has his own show called Chub Life. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, you can catch me all that over on Cole TV, and you can follow me on the TikTok, the Instagram, all that under XLJtheOG.
And you can find him on World Championship Wreckage with Learning the Ropes, where he talks about all your nostalgia for feuds, matches, wrestlers, merchandise, WCW magazines. It is a blast on back in the day. Will, what's going on in Botch Spots and Chair Shots? What we got going on other than you cussing out a certain platform?
I would like to publicly state right now that Botch Spots and Chair Shots has broken up with Streamlabs. By Sunday, I will be making the official move to StreamYards, and it's 100% you, not me. Collab Cam is broken. I am tired of losing content and streams because of their fucked up program. That being said, you can find me on Botch Spots and Chair Shots on Sunday night at 7 o'clock on Rivet City Radio. You can check my interview series out. I just dropped one with Twitch from the Monster Factory from Apple TV Plus, the show with Danny Cage. I just dropped an interview with him. I've got Cody Lane and Barrett Brown next week. Both of those are New Japan Dojo graduates from the LA Dojo. So they're going to be my first New Japan talent. I've never interviewed a New Japan guy, so these will be my first two. Some cool stuff's coming. Plus, always WCW every week.
Every week, I get to sit down with Will and some buddies and talk about my favorite time in pro wrestling and my favorite company of all time. But you can find me at DadHat Wrestling on pretty much everything: Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Follow World Championship Wreckage, of course, here on YouTube. Like I said, we are 10 subscribers away from hitting that first big 100 mark, which is still insane to me. You can find us on Twitter at WC Wreckage Pod. It's where we put the polls each and every week, along with some fun interactive content. You also can find us on TikTok at WC Wreckage Podcast, and then over on Instagram, because Instagram's handles are weird as hell, and it is World Championship Wreckage, but an underscored between each word. Yeah, we got some cool stuff coming up. Like I've said before, there's some new shows coming down the line that I am not at liberty to announce yet, but something cool coming from some folks you might know from another podcast that we all know and love. And then, of course, we've talked about it. There's going to be some TNA, some ECW, some WWF content coming very soon. My little show that I've kind of started doing, I need to record some more episodes. Being a dad, being a husband, working all the time, it's hard. Finding time to record is hard. But the worst of the war is the first way we're kind of branching off into other companies. So, but there's content from other companies coming down the line for the channel as well. But like each and every week, we got to put a poll up, Will. And I told you I had something that I think might leave you speechless. So I'm going to let you go first.
That's not fair. I went first last week. I'm defaulting. You got to go first.
You're winning. You're winning this week, and you're winning this one.
I mean, you put me on the spot and told me to come up with something good, and I couldn't figure anything out. So I was sitting here struggling, and I was like, what haven't we talked about, and what is something that would be like a lot of fun to bring up because I was like, DadHat's brought up things like Disco Inferno.
Yes.
We had
You
a
say Horace
disco
Hogan, I
episode.
swear.
Oh my God. Like, I feel so bad for the guests from that week. And I was like, I've got to have something really good. And you've like blown it out of the park recently. I was like, he's got some really good topics coming up. And I was at a loss. So what I want to do is I'm going to bring up my least favorite point in WCW history. So if nothing else, everybody will know that it'll be an episode where you will be able to hear me bitch and moan for easily a couple hours if they let me. I'm going to talk about Kevin Nash as the booker of WCW.
Oh, I knew it was coming.
Ah, yes, please.
That was my topic. I was like, because anybody who's listened to this show regularly knows I've said forever that giving Nash the pencil was the final straw that broke the camel's back for WCW.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Nash as the booker, DadHat.
I almost don't want to throw mine out because I just want to see you go off on Nash. But no, this hit me, and I was like, why have I not thrown out this before?
Right.
You know what I want to talk about?
What?
I want to talk about the history and our favorite WCW video games.
Oh, wow. You son of a bitch.
Yeah. I want to
I'm
talk
going to vote
about
for that now. Like, I'm not even going to vote for my shit.
WCW versus the World, WCW Video World Tour, Revenge. You know, how that company then jumped to the WWF, and we got WrestleMania 2000, No Mercy. It just kind of lined up perfectly with AEW Fight Forever coming out, and kind of being trying. It's a fun game. I hope
I've tried it. Are you talking about Fight Forever?
Yeah, it's a fun game.
I will say this though: it is no Backstage Assault, the greatest wrestling game of all time.
Oh, we'll get to that. But WCW Backstage Assault, Mayhem, like all those things. But I want to talk about the history and the best, in my opinion, the best wrestling video games of all time. WCW wrestling video games.
That's a good topic.
That's a great topic. Well played.
Damn good.
But now I'm like, damn, I want to hear you bitch about Nash.
I might do Nash 2 weeks in a row until I win it, just so I can bitch about Nash.
That's your new gimmick, brother. Like, you do Nash every single week until it finally gets
they finally let me get a chance to bitch about Nash.
Yes.
I'll just succeed. I'll just be like, here you go. You have this week.
Next week, DadHat will be like, I want to talk about Nash as the booker. 98% of you motherfuckers will vote for
it. Was he the booker during the whole like New Blood type thing?
No, he was the Finger Poke of Doom booker.
Okay.
That I know.
Breaking Goldberg's streak, taking Ray's mask, like all of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we will either talk about Kevin Nash as the booker or WCW, the history of WCW video games. Still on the poll, I think we have like a little less than 24 hours left. We both wanted to do a watch along. So either Slamboree 98 or the last Nitro, and I want to say we're almost tied again, Will, based on because Twitter, you're in the lead. Instagram and TikTok have more votes for Slamboree, so I think we're about tied again. So you got about 24 hours. Go on WC Wreckage Pod on Twitter and vote for one of those, what we're going to watch and talk about. We haven't done a watch along yet, so this will be a fun one next week.
The last Nitro is just sad. It's just sad.
It is.
Like, especially when they're not in an arena. They're like at some spring break hotel. You know what I'm saying? Like
Panama City.
Yeah, Panama City. Like I could have swore that. Remember MTV used to film Spring Break?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the crew was just there 2 weeks before.
It feels that way. It gives that feel. Yeah. Well, I think if you win that, I think we need to spice it up. If yours wins, it's the last Nitro. I feel like we need to watch the last Nitro and the Raw because there's WCW stuff on that Raw
that'd be
too.
cool.
The simulcast. The
Yeah.
simulcast.
Because
That's a great idea.
Because Jarrett's, JEFF. You're FIRREDD fired. Like, there's WCW stuff on that Raw.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Dope.
So,
Let's do that.
all right, folks. Well, for Juss, for XLJ the OG, for my buddy the Will Gray, I am your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan. We'll see you next week for another episode of World Championship Wreckage, and we're going to end this week like we end each and every week. Wise words from the American Husky Road,
American Dream.
the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.